I was in 10th grade. I had had a crush on a boy for a very long time. And he finally asked me out that summer. And on one of our dates at his house, his parents were gone and his brother and sister were there with their boyfriend and girlfriend, and they had cocaine. And so they offered it to me, told me it would be okay, and I did my very first line of cocaine for no other reason than I liked a boy. For the next couple of years in high school, I used cocaine recreationally with alcohol. I got a boyfriend at the end of my junior year, and he was in a band, and we would do alcohol and cocaine every weekend. It just became a normal, everyday thing. When I was about 23, 24, I started going to underground clubs and hanging out with different types of people and using meth all the time. And I was slowly but surely no longer being a functioning addict. I was becoming an addict. When I was 25, I got pregnant with my son Trevor and had him and was able to stay sober during that pregnancy. About a year after that, I started using again. By this time, I was probably using meth every day. And soon after that, I discovered that I was pregnant with my younger son, Skylar. And for some reason, I was able to stay sober during that pregnancy as well. But the minute I got done breastfeeding Skylar, my addiction exploded. It was Christmas of '97, and a friend of mine had stopped by who I had used with and whatnot, and asked if he could borrow my car. And when he left, I was in my living room working on a project. My older son was in his room on the bunk beds, and my younger son was sleeping on the couch. And I heard this voice tell me to get up and go to my room. So I did. And when I got to my bedroom, my bed was on fire. So I got my son Trevor out of his room, I grabbed my son Skylar, and I went running out the door with the phone that reached out as I was dialing 911. And as I got out the door of my apartment, my bedroom exploded. And I would love to tell you that I got it. That I thought to myself, whew, my life is crazy and out of control, and I'm gonna clean myself up. But that is far from the case. The best I could do the very next day, with my room completely drenched in water and everything I valued blown up, the very best I could do was call somebody and go to their house and use. I used meth that day, and I used a lot of it because I couldn't feel that stuff. I needed to block that out. The police came to my house during that time and looking for the guy who blew up my apartment. And I let them in, and when I did that, they took my son Trevor and took him to the Polanski Center. And the best I could do was get high. I have no power. I have no will. I have nothing but this drug that keeps telling me that I need to get loaded. My apartment complex manager was successful at getting me evicted. My son's dad, my younger son's dad, came for a visit, and I let him go stay with his dad, and my older son stayed with my parents, and I became homeless. And I started living in this field on the corner of Jackson and Vernon. There was this big, huge field. And I lived in this shelter made of pallets. And I was scared every day. And so I did what it took to survive. And when you're homeless, surviving means dumpster diving. Surviving means eating food that restaurants throw out. Surviving means, for me at the time, meant getting high so I didn't have to realize that this was my life. You know, I had gone from being this neat kid who grew up in this really amazing house with these great parents. I had dove and I had danced, and I had let this drug steal everything. I would tootle around town with my dog. I would go to my mom's work to get food. Her work wasn't too far from where I was staying, and I would cruise into that place like I owned the joint. I really would. And my mom was my biggest codependent. Like, she co-signed my stuff for a very long time. But her and my dad were rapidly coming to their end. And they were getting ready to go out of town, and they let me come to their house, and I failed to do what they asked me to do. And at that point, my dad asked me to leave, and that he was changing the locks on the door. He never wanted to see me again, and to please leave my mom alone. And if I wanted to see my son Trevor, I could call him and he would bring him to me. So there I was, without anything. I went back to my field, and wouldn't you know it, the police had arrived. We were being evicted, which I find so funny, that I was being evicted out of a field, and because they were getting ready to, the property had been bought and they were getting ready to develop it. So I was getting kicked out of that field, and I had nowhere else to go. And my significant other at the time had lived in the tunnels, the drainage tunnels in El Cajon before. And so he took me there. And I found a tunnel to live in. And I would travel down into this tunnel every day at night so I could sleep. And in the morning, me and my dog, we would come out and walk around. It's shocking that this was once my life, that this was my reality, that I allowed drugs and alcohol to take over my world to the extent that I no longer existed, and all that was left was the addict that needed to get loaded every day. You would cross the water mostly because the police didn't want to cross the water because it's disgusting. So we're going to cross the water and walk down to the tunnel down there where I stay. And I was just a shell of a human being. I think the only emotion I had was fear. And by this time, getting high was not really fixing anything. It was just making me so I could be normal, so I could just get up and do something. And soon I discovered that I was done. I didn't want to live this life anymore, because the idea of walking in front of a car or jumping off a bridge, those all seemed like good ideas. So that night, I had crawled back into my tunnel with my dog, and my friend and I had he was going to come get me high, because that's what I did. I got high because that's what you do. And I played one of those little glow-in-the-dark solitaire games until I fell asleep. And maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he showed up, and he had the drugs on him and woke me up and asked me if I wanted to get high. And for some reason, I just said no. I want to sleep. Let's get high in the morning. And that morning, maybe 9 a.m., my pager started going off, and I looked, and it was my mom. And by the third time she paged me, I thought, okay, I'm gonna go see what she wants. She obviously wants something. She's paged me 3 times. And I found the drugs that he had brought, and I thought about using them and getting high and then going calling her. And then I thought to myself, no, the last time I did that, he beat me up pretty well. I don't want to end up in this brick wall. And so then I woke him up, and he got up in this huge rage. And I mean, he was so angry. Even both of our dogs that were there were shaking. And it was then, as I'm sitting there, I felt this embrace. And I could hear God telling me, stay right here. I have a better plan for you. And as I watched him, my friend, gather his things and stormed out of that tunnel and cross across this water and go the other direction, I could still feel Jesus holding me and saying, don't go until I tell you it's time to go. And then I heard him say, okay, let's go. I have a better plan. So I got up, and I got my dog, and put on my shoes, and I walked down the tunnel and across the water and up the other tunnel and up this embankment that I would have to go up to. And I walked to the nearest phone, and I called my mom, Collect, and she said, okay, I found some place for you to go. I will pick you up at this time. Where will you be? So I told her where I would be, and she came. I went back to my tunnel, and I just had this sense of, okay, maybe there is hope. And within 3 hours, I was at a treatment center. The treatment center that I was in, and my family and I decided that I needed to go to a recovery home. So I went to a recovery home in Escondido, and eventually I had to start hair follicling drug tests so I could see my son Skylar. I had made a parenting agreement with his dad. He'd gotten custody. And so I remember going to take my first hair follicle drug test, and one of the ladies saying to me, good luck. And I got to say to her, luck is not a factor today, because I knew I would test clean. And that was the coolest feeling ever, that I was going to test clean and have a 2-week visit at my house with my parents and my sons over Christmas. So I had my 2-week visit. It was amazing, and I got to be present for the first time in years with my kids. And after those 2 weeks, I went back to the recovery home. And I had many days where I didn't want to do this because it was really hard. But I kept hearing Jesus whisper to me, you can do this. I am here with you. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And eventually, I moved back home. It was time for me to leave the recovery home. And the day that I moved back home, my dad picked me up, and he handed me a key to his house. And I was like amazed, through the steps and through God and through being vulnerable and being available and doing what it takes. I was getting my life back. This August 14th, I will have 16 years of continuous sobriety. And I'm not stopping. I have life going on, and I have these boys that I love dearly. I have this fellowship of people here at Journey that I come alongside with, and We all get to share our hurts. We all get to share our brokenness. And we all get to share our victories. And I could not imagine life without them. And so for me, if going to meetings every week and working my steps, whether it's through AA or CR, and sponsoring women and being of service in a ministry here is what it takes to keep this, I'm in. I